Welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. We've been bringing these shows to you for quite a while now, and we always seem to have interesting people. We have people that know what's going on. This show is no exception. Our guest is Eddie Ballard, Captain Eddie Ballard, who's a jail commander, and he has a lot to say about that jail. We had a tour sponsored by the Taxpayer Association, and we had a tour of the facility, and it is amazing. Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Eddie, how'd you get involved in the jail business? You went from patrol, and then you went up rank, and then you thought that being in charge of a jail would be a good idea.
It's a little bit more in depth than that, but I started law enforcement about 30 years ago, and I started with San Joaquin County. And San Joaquin County, I did a little work on the streets, but primarily in the jail. And then when I finally had a opportunity to come work for the county that I grew up in, I came up here and I started, and I was on the streets and I did narcotics and investigations and lots of patrol work. Under the penal code, the sheriff has to have at least one sworn personnel in the jail at all times. Back when the new jail project first started, I was in operations, and Sheriff Downham had come to me and said, "Hey, I would like you to do everything we can to build a new jail, and this is going to be your assignment, and you'll be the bureau commander." So that's how I got into it. And since that time, I went from the mindset of being on the streets and doing what a street cop does and all those things. And my mindset has really changed since I was involved in building the new jail. And I've actually been involved in running the old jail and our current jail for the last 10 years. At this point in my career, I find this probably the most fantastic part of my career, is operating in a jail and seeing all the human dynamics that happen within a jail and through the criminal justice system. It kind of went from everything I did on the streets to put them in there to find out what actually happens through the criminal justice system. And I find it phenomenal, and I'm glad that I am the jail bureau commander.
Well, we're glad you are too.
Thank you.
Now, also, what's the financial status of the jail? Is it operating okay?
The jail, by and large, as far as all the sheriff's budget units, we typically do very well. And I like to say, the sheriff office as a whole, we try to do or be very good stewards of our taxpayers' money. But we have specific jobs that we have to do for the citizens of Calaveras County, and and it requires that the Board of Supervisors provide us a budget that allows us to do our job. Now, the jail, typically, there's a couple things with the jail that the Board of Supervisors realizes the penal code states that they have to fund it, and they have to fund it at a level in which we can operate. Right. Do I truly believe that they do that? No, because, if we get into further things, we'll talk about it. But by and large, each year we get enough funding in order to meet the basic human needs of the inmates that are over there. But we typically always go in the red primarily on overtime, because I do not have enough staff to operate that jail the way it should be.
That is a very interesting point. I attended the Board of Supervisors meetings on the budget. And it's apparent to our group. Matter of fact, our group just had a board meeting. We're writing to the Board of Supervisors requesting that they do an MOU between the county and the union and bring the salaries equal to being competitive with similar counties. In other words, right away, that includes existing employees and new hires. We're falling behind. The taxpayers are being hurt badly because of the long turnover it takes to replace people, and it'll be a lot cheaper just to pay them a competitive salary and keep them. And maybe attract better people.
It would be, or to keep the people that we've lost that are phenomenal officers. Yeah. The jail and the sheriff's office patrol division has had a enormous amount of turnover. When we first opened the new jail, I opened it up with 12 people, and the average length of experience there was about 6 years if you combined everybody. Over the last 3 years, I've gone through, and this number may not be correct, but we've gone complete turnover. So and now my average length of experience there is 6 to 8 months. So I'm operating a jail with career criminals that have 5 to 10 years of being experience of being in jail with very inexperienced officers. And the primary reason the sheriff's office is experienced this loss is because of the salaries. And in our jail, believe it or not, we do so much more in our jail compared to our neighboring counties. But they got to work so much overtime for less pay and do so much more in our jail because I got a very programmatic type of jail running. And they can go to either one of our neighboring counties and get up to a 24% pay increase.
Right.
And we are spending, the sheriff's office, we're spending about $30,000 to train one individual that doesn't even stay there for a year and then goes to another department. So if we could get a competitive-based salary or something like that, I'm sure that would alleviate our problems, and we would have, the experience that's needed to operate a jail long-term.
Well, I think our letter of recommendation will be going to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. And now sometimes we're ignored. Well, most of the time we're ignored. But that's okay.
Aboard, so am I.
But I think that the bottom line for the taxpayer is the savings by having competitive salaries. And along those same lines, we also recommend that non-specialized positions in government that have comparable job descriptions in the private sector, we do the same thing. We go competitive with the private sector, which could mean lowering some salaries.
Right.
And we feel that the purpose of government really is to operate efficiently in the best interests of the owners, which is the taxpayers. And they need to attract and keep good people, bottom line.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we'll see what happens. By the show next month, maybe we'll interview some other people that are involved with this, and who knows, might have some good news.
I hope so, because everybody that there's right now can be phenomenal for this county and the taxpayers, and get them all trained up, get them all experienced, and want them to stay here in the county because of the county. And competitive pay will do that.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer.
Right.
Now, one of the things that you're pretty strong on is the Constitution.
I am.
Yeah, and so are we. And so how does the Constitution affect life in the jail?
Well, a lot of people, and we had a long, in-depth conversation with this, and a lot of people don't understand how a jail operates and what all the aspects of our jail. But we are required to follow the Constitution from everything to protect people's basic human needs and to protect their rights. And believe it or not, just because they committed a crime, they still have rights. Right. And so we got to make sure that those are done. So correctional officers are constitutional officers all day long, from the time they show up until the time they leave. Now, myself, I'm running the jail. That applies to me too. But when I was out on the streets, the only time that I made sure that I protected people's constitutional rights was if I acted. The rest of the time I was driving around, I wasn't protecting your constitutional rights unless I acted. If I pulled you over, I had to follow the Fourth Amendment, and make sure that I protected that right. If I questioned you, I had to, advise you of your Miranda rights, the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. But in the jail, the inmates' constitutional rights, you got the First Amendment, which, they have a right to express themselves and to follow their religious beliefs, and I have to allow them to do that. Right. I have to make sure that their Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights are protected all day long. The 14th Amendment, due process, I have to make sure and get them to court. I have to make sure that they are represented, and even, the 13th Amendment in the Constitution applies. That's slavery and forced servitude. Right. And so I can't if I have unsentenced people in there, I can't make them work. But once they're convicted, then the 13th Amendment, now they're duly convicted, and I can have them work and I can have them do those things. But we must follow the Constitution all day long, or if we don't operate effectively and under the Constitution, it's going to cost taxpayers a lot of money in lawsuits.
Right.
So we got to make sure that we follow that.
Now, the rights to life, liberty, and property, as expressed in the 5th and 14th Amendments, are held in suspension because they violated somebody else's rights.
Correct.
And but that doesn't mean they disappear. They're just held in suspension.
Correct.
Almost like a parent.
Exactly. And there's one thing, and I tell all the officers that work in the jail, we are people managers. A lot of people want to say that we're adult babysitters, but we're not. We manage those people that, like you said, their rights are suspended,
right.
but they're still insured.
Right.
And so I have to make sure that they're not violated.
Yeah. The tour we took of the jail, I was just amazed at how well organized you are.
Thank you.
You've got these different colored lines going down these passageways, going to different places, and I got lost, and I imagine those lines would prevent me from getting lost if I knew where they went.
Correct.
So now you chose those colors for a particular something in your history and background experiences that allowed you to pick those colors. What was that?
Well, each pod, we have 6 different pods in the new jail.
Okay.
So each pod has its own color, and that's kind of based on classification, and then it's based on also programming needs of the jail. And so, if they're following the gray line, they go to the west housing, south pod. The blue, they go to the north housing pod. So it's blue and gray, north and south.
Okay.
And then on the other side, there's some other different colors that may or may not represent my high school.
Is that Bret Hart?
Yeah. But, they're for classification purposes.
Right.
And each pod wears a different color uniform for a couple primary reasons. So if one of the officers goes by the pod that wears a yellow uniform and sees somebody in there in orange, we know we got a problem.
Right.
Because that's a separate classification. And then other pods represent inmates that are a little, or their uniforms are a little more dangerous to staff or other inmates. So they got to be housed, in a special housing pod. And then other colors represent individuals that have mental illness or needed to be administratively segregated for their own safety or the safety of other inmates.
Now, do they get 3 meals a day? And what does that cost?
Well, in the last 3 years of operation, we've served, I got it down here, about 309,000 meals in 3 years.
Oh man, that's a lot.
It is a lot. So there's 3 meals a day, and our average cost of a meal is $1.21.
I wish I could do that. I would have more money to spend on something else.
There you go. We manage the money as best we can and provide the services that we can without, going overboard. And,
right.
I like to say we're very good stewards of the county's money.
On the jail, you have a tunnel in planning. Mm-hmm. You have a tunnel now, and then you're planning a video system for arraignment with a judge. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if you remember the old jail, the Sally Port was out in the open. It was in public, and we'd have to transport inmates through the public to get and all that. That's a very dangerous method of operation. So in the planning of the new jail, we wanted to make sure that we had an underground tunnel that connected to the court, so inmates are never seen by the public. There's no chance for escapes. There's no chances for somebody trying to come and rescue an inmate. It's a very dangerous situation. So now we can take the inmates directly. Once they come in the intake, they never get outside until they're released or something happens. And so they go through the tunnel and go over to the courts, and they go between the courtrooms. And we actually got holding cells over there for them too, which we never did before in the old jail. So efficiency is so much better now. And when it comes to the video arraignment, what we will be doing at some point, I wish it would have been done by now, but it's a lot of complicated things. We got new judges elected, and and trying to get everybody back on board. But all the arraignments will be done within the jail, so they won't even be leaving the jail, and so that just creates more staff efficiencies, and
court efficiencies too.
And court efficiencies, and it's all taxpayer money. I mean, the more I can centralize everything into one area, it takes less staff to do it, and it works out a lot better.
Well, that's cool.
Well, thank you.
One of the things that I remember former Sheriff Kuntz, who was a guest here as well, talked about 85% of the jails are filled with people that relate to the drug wars. Not necessarily marijuana possession, but other things. Is that still true? Is it happening now?
Well, in my experience, that hasn't changed. And typically, the people end up in jail specific to either drug abuse or alcohol abuse, and that relates to everything, every additional crime that they commit. They get drunk, they beat up their wives. They get on methamphetamine, they beat up their wives, or they have to go out and steal to get money to get their drug of choice, or they drink and they drive and they injure somebody, or they get arrested for drunken and driving. So, over the last 10 years, I've talked to thousands and thousands of inmates, and the correlation is substance abuse or alcohol abuse is the primary factor why people come to jail.
Okay, so the drugs are not causing people to have bad behavior; it's associated with the bad behavior.
It's their choice and their addiction to that
whatever it is,
whatever that is, and it's that lack of personal responsibility. To overpower what the drugs do to them. I mean, they would rather be high than taking care of their family, or they'd rather be drunk than taking care of their families.
It's kind of like an escape.
Yes, it's like an escape.
Escape from reality.
Exactly, and that's the prime. It's people's those personal choices within those types of things that lend people to into jail. The vast majority. Yeah. I mean. Everything relates to substance abuse, whether it's drugs or it's alcohol, primarily over there. Okay.
We had a prohibition before you and I were born, and it was a constitutional amendment.
Correct.
And it lasted for some years, and then they passed another constitutional amendment to repeal it.
Correct.
And it was discovered during that period of time that crime was just going out of sight. A black market was created, and it was profitable to be in that business.
Yes.
And there's a lot of money made by some questionable people during that time. Well, if my history is correct, back in the 70s, a new drug prohibition was started called the Drug Wars. But they neglected to get a constitutional amendment. Instead, they did it through the legislature and the court reinterpreting the Constitution. Well, it seems like the result of that parallels the alcohol prohibition. Crime is going out of sight. They're not stopping people from using drugs, and it's built a huge black market economy that's tinged practically everything. And what would happen if the war on drugs were repealed?
Well, like you said, there is no constitutional thing to appeal it. And the thing about it is, just like with Prohibition, you can never govern either through a constitutional amendment or through a law people's personal behaviors. So if it's out there, they're going to get it, they're going to use it, and they're going to abuse it.
Okay.
And like with Prohibition, and I don't know how many years it was, like 22, 24 years that they tried to keep it out. But it was a generational thing. And, if you look at the history of it, it didn't last long enough to get people that weren't using it to understand it was no good. You still had that generation that was still using it, that was still created the black market, that, da-da-da. And that's what we do every time we try to appeal alcohol or we try to do something with drugs. You can't govern individuals, people's personalities.
Right.
That's going to always be a problem. I don't care how strong it is, and that's why, I'm not objective to the word war on drugs.
Right.
I just believe that
war on bad behavior.
Yeah, it's bad behavior, and if society, everybody in society, would participate in that war on drugs if it was a war. I look at, like, if you go back to World War II, everybody built planes, everybody, got in the factories to help the United States win. But, we have individual behaviors here that we can't govern in any way, if that makes sense.
It does. And also it raises the question, can you have a war on a substance? You have a war against a nation, maybe? How can you have a war against a substance?
I just think that was a bad terminology, and I think it was all, in my opinion, it was all, focused on going out there and trying to take down this and do that and all that stuff. And I can legitimately say this now. I used to think that way, but I've been dealing with the jail for 10 years, and although the jail has two primary goals, and is to hold people accountable once they're sentenced, and the second goal is to return them to society as a productive citizen. And whether or not that's 1 a year or 5 a year, it takes a long time to get people's behaviors to change. It's a difficult thing. Focus, to me, is, you should go out there and you should try to get off the streets as much as you can, but you should prevent the youngins, or try to come up with something to prevent people from starting to use it. Not saying, oh, it's okay, it's recreational, it's this or that. That just leads to, abuse. Yeah, and once we start, as a society, condoning things to, then we're always going to have a problem. We're always going to have a problem.
It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better. People, the only person that can rehabilitate I can only rehabilitate myself.
Right.
But as a jail commander, working with other entities within the county, substance abuse, behavioral health, and all those other things, I can provide them with the tools to attempt or to try to get better, but they still got to make that choice. And that's the most difficult thing individuals can do, is make the choice to get off of drugs or alcohol.
It looks like you're doing something on those lines now. I understand that their prisoners can get training, and also religious connection, and you've put aside a program for that. How's that work?
Well, we've actually got a lot of programs that we're operating within the jail right now. We've got Courage to Change program, which is basically what I'm addressing is how to get out of that cycle of substance abuse or alcohol abuse, and to see the world from a different set of glasses. You know, that the world can be good if you're sober or you're clean.
Right.
And then we've also got adult tutoring classes to help not all inmates don't have high school diplomas, but we got quite a few in there that don't. So we've got adult tutoring for that. We've got a GED program going to try to give them the tools. I'm not going to look you in the eye and tell you that that's going to solve all this problem, because the individual has to solve it. But it is still the responsibility of the jail to try to get them back out on the streets as a better citizen than they went in. Not as a changed human being, but as a better citizen, able to stay away from the drugs and all that stuff and get out there and make themselves productive. I cannot make anybody productive, but I can give them the tools to enter society and hopefully start working for the taxpayers of Calaveras County.
How many inmates have actually got their high school diploma or the GED through the program?
Well, I didn't bring that with me, but if you have me back, I'll get all that information. The class is full all day long. Every day. So they're in there doing it. The problem that I have is that that GED program, I think it takes roughly about a year to do and complete. There's very few inmates that stay a complete year in there. So they'll be in there for 3 months, start the program. They'll go back out. They quite haven't got it figured out yet. They get, start using their drug of choice again or alcohol, commit a crime, and then they end back up in jail, and then they start the program where they left off. So your program could end up taking 5 years.
What is the average length of time that an inmate would be in your jail?
The average length, if you combine all the inmates, is about 36 days.
Okay.
Because
that's pretty short time.
It's pretty short time, and we go through a lot of people. But we do have inmates in there under, that are sentenced now under AB 109 that kind of skew that a little bit. That are in there for 5. I think since AB 109's happened, I've had a couple people in there that were sentenced to county jail for over 5 years.
Now, AB 109 is a new law that kind of transferred the prison population from state prisons to the local jails, and under the theory that something good would happen. I'm not quite sure if that is the actual result of AB 109.
I think time will tell.
Yeah.
I think it actually took place in 2010.
Right.
And I realize this is 7 years later, but everything's starting to try to catch up. All the initial fears of what was going to happen here really didn't come to fruition. I average about 9 to 11 people in the jail that are sentenced under the AB 109 standards, but it's the same people that we had over and over and over again anyway. But I think, as with everything else, we talked about prohibition. We talked about the drawer. This is something new that society is trying.
There's nothing we won't talk about.
Right. If we don't buy into the idea, and I'm not, I'm not saying that I am, but we as a society has got to say we're putting our foot down.
Right.
This is exactly how we're going to do it, and it's not unknown what we need to do. It's just that every time there's a champion to try to get something going,
right,
they go away, other people's perspectives come in, and the whole project goes away, or the whole program goes away.
Lose your spark plugs.
Yeah, you lose your spark plugs. So time will tell. I do, the one aspect of that is I do believe that if they're citizens of our community, then we should be trying to do something to improve those citizens.
Yeah. What about this sanctuary cities movement? This is going around the country quite a bit.
It is.
And we have a minute left. Maybe you have a thought on that.
Well, that is above my pay grade because, I operate the jail for Sheriff DeBasilio.
Right.
And, we are following what the guidelines are right now. If we get, somebody in there, I think that would be something that you should get from him. I certainly have my own opinion on there,
okay,
but I don't want to overstep my bounds.
Yeah.
He is the chief executive officer of the county, and that will be his decision where we go from there.
Okay, I understand that. Well, we've had an interesting discussion, and we look forward. Maybe we'll have the sheriff here, and he can answer some of these questions. They want to thank you for watching our program, and we look forward to you coming back again. Thank you.
Thank you.